Good evening. Thank you so much for joining us tonight. My name's Terry Lynn Meese. I work here at the Troy Hayner Cultural Center in Troy, Ohio. We have a wonderful concert for you tonight. This is our Jazz in March concert series. Our host is Kego Hirakawa. He was our very first musician for this series, and he decided to partner up with us, and he has just brought so much to this series, and we're so grateful to have him. He's going to do a short interview first with Brandon Coleman so you can get to know him a little better, and then we'll start the concert. Thank you so much for joining us.
Thank you, Teralyn. My name is Keigo Hirakawa, and with me today is Brandon Coleman. He's a phenomenal guitar player, and he leads Brandon Coleman Quartet, which I hope you'll enjoy hearing today. So Brandon, thank you for being here with me. So I want to ask you a lot of questions, but the thing that amazes me the most about you is that you grew up in middle of nowhere in Kentucky with, this is pre-YouTube age, and how did you ever come out to be this guitar player, and where do you get all that inspiration in that childhood? And, so how did you become to be the person you are?
That's awesome, Kego. Thanks so much. That means a lot, bud. And that's a good question. The area I grew up in, Eastern Kentucky, specifically the town of Pikeville, it's a pretty small town, and it's mostly known for, famous hillbilly feuds like the Hatfield-McCoy feud, which if you've ever checked into that, it's pretty interesting. Not so much known for jazz guitar, obviously, but it is a rich cultural area with a lot of great music, Appalachian folk music and country musicians. And a lot of my family were really good musicians in their own right. Not professionals, but my grandpa, he played his whole life. He played in like the Chet Atkins, Merle Travis style. And that's really what got me started. I got my first guitar when I was 12. But even before that, I didn't own a guitar, but there were always guitars around, or keyboards or guitars or synthesizers, little things, banjos. And people would always be strumming on them at family get-togethers. And when I finally got my own, my grandpa got me started and started showing me some chords, showed me some simple songs, some folk songs. But really what was the most important thing he ever showed me was how to learn things by ear. And he was self-taught. He didn't read music or anything like that, but he spent a lifetime putting the needle on records and figuring things out methodically. And that really taught me the discipline to, when I found something that, tweaked my ear in a certain way, that I could just investigate and figure it out right there. So without any teachers in the style of jazz, when I finally came around to discovering that music via pathways from progressive rock and 70s psychedelic music and things like that, found my way into like jazz fusion, Mahavishnu Orchestra, Tribal Tech, Chick Corea. I just started going to the records and figuring out what those things were little by little. I would slow them down, figure out what note it was, figure out what the scale I would need to play was, and then eventually when things like the internet started becoming more filled with information, I would find things on there. And that led me to decide I should probably do this for a living because I love it. And, I decided to go to school for it, did an undergraduate and master's in the craft. And, almost 10 years later from that master's degree, here we are and still playing music. So, yeah, just a hillbilly boy, I guess.
Yeah, that's right. I mean, but it is amazing to see that transformation, And then so like knowing your music, you play jazz, you play fusion, you play rock, you play, hillbilly blues, bluegrass. And you spend a lot of time, composing. And I understand the music that you're playing today is, mostly your compositions too. And I know that you're very prolific in writing. So I'm assuming that there's a little bit of like an identity, crisis or something, that says, who are you, when you talk about yourself, are you a musician? Are you a composer? Are you a jazz musician? Are you, a fusion player? So how do you describe yourself?
Yeah, I think if I was to choose, I would call myself a composer first, because even when I'm playing, I try to think like a composer. I try to consider timbre and texture, and I'm always listening for what everybody else is doing before I jump in and say something. Also I think that's how I've learned music, from transcribing and figuring things out. A large part of my early days of figuring out how music worked was, okay, that was what Chick Corea did. I'm going to try to write something and rip him off a little bit. And I learned so much doing that. And just as much time I spent with a guitar in my hands, I spent, on a computer typing in MIDI notes and seeing what notes sounded good together. And I think still that's how my brain works, even when I'm playing and improvising in whatever style. I do kind of float between what style I'm like really into at the moment. I'll like this month I'm really just feeling holding a Stratocaster and putting distortion on it and playing like Jimi Hendrix. But I think at the end of the day, like when it's my own music, it's just kind of comes together into kind of a gumbo of all those styles of music. And I think the music we played today kind of represents that character. You'll hear, weird circus music. You'll hear, film scorey, French classical music, and you'll hear straight up swinging modern jazz. So, yeah, but I would say composer. Yeah.
Yeah, I can see that. And then the you spend a lot of time. I know you're very vocal about the sense, establishing a sense of community within musicians and all the people that love music surrounding that. I know that you not only perform out everywhere, but like you spend a lot of time going to everybody else's gigs and advertising everybody else's gigs, and also trying to make sure that the musicians connect with other musicians. What is your idea of the sort of like the community of musicians that you want to see in Cincinnati and Ohio?
Yeah, that's a great question. I'm really passionate about music being a communal thing, and I think that maybe comes from growing up with it being a family event, because to me, whenever we're sitting here playing, it's just like a family gathering. We're having fun. It's just as fun as telling jokes and telling stories or eating food. And to me, it serves that same cultural purpose. And I get the same thrill, playing my own music that I do hearing a friend's other great music, and I'm not even playing. It's just as a great experience for me. So one thing that I think is interesting about the times we live in now is I think we take for granted sometimes of how much great music and art there is out there, and the fact that we can, in the comfort of our own home, hop on YouTube and look up some great performance. It's there documented forever, but sometimes we forget that right around the corner there's something happening live and in the flesh. And while that may look different in the future when we come out of our pandemic era, I think that the spirit of live performance is such a great one, and it's something not to be missed. I think it's a great part of the human experience. And I feel like when you participate in that, it makes you a better musician. And if you're not a musician, it makes you an enriched person, and it makes you enjoy life more. So for me, like I always try to encourage my young music students to be a part of that, because I think it makes things more viable for everybody, both in terms of being professionals with a career, but it also just makes life better for everybody in the community. When there's a big live music center, or even art or sculpture or literature, all those things just enrich the people around it. So that's how I feel about that.
Yeah, that's beautiful. So also in the music that you bring to Cincinnati, to Ohio, and to Troy, the music that you compose for a certain band, and I know that you're playing in a lot of different bands, right? And I hear a lot of different influences. So how do you choose what you want to put into your quartet? Because it has your name attached to it, right? So how do you what do you see when you compose relative to the musicians that you're playing with today?
Yeah, that's a great question. And I think when I'm writing specifically for my band, as opposed to, the fusion band Spherical Agenda, it's like those two bands have one different band member, which is really interesting. But, me and Matt and Jeff have been playing together for, 8 or 9 years now, 8 years. And Ben started playing with us when you moved to Japan. And, the collaboration of those voices brings out something fresh. And even like when Jeff is playing drums, Matt plays differently. And when Ben is playing piano, Jeff plays differently. Or like when, there's just so many different voices interacting in different ways. And specifically, like in this group, I think I have a specific artistic vision of it being this, not ambiguous, but just kind of a stylistic smorgasbord of a lot of different things, but not anything in specific, It's jazz for sure, but it's also orchestral. And I like that everybody can bring that to the table and not get locked into kind of like one mode of thought. But if I'm writing for a different band where it's like, okay, we're writing 80s fusion, then I get in the mindset of like, we need DX7 keyboards. I got to play a pentatonic scale, that kind of thing. But I like in this band that things can be open-ended. I don't have to give everybody a ton of information. Even if the music sounds like it's like 8 pages long, sometimes it's 8 measures and we're just taking it where we want. So yeah, it is interesting, and that's a really good question, and I'm sure that will evolve over time too. It's it's one of those things that changes whoever's interpreting your music too. It's like if if Jeff and Matt move to Barbados tomorrow, having a different drummer and bass player in there would totally change the dynamic. Right. And as you know, that can be both challenging for a moment to adapt, and then it can also be like thrilling to like experience the same song 2 different ways. And I felt like that way, like playing this music with you and Ben is both 2 different experiences too. Yeah. Like you guys bring different sensibilities to the table.
Yeah, the band sounds different.
It does, yeah. And it's cool, but like the record we made together, it's a totally different experience. Right. And but still like the core message is still there, I think. That exploration of like a polystylistic interpretation of jazz. Yeah. That's probably the most pretentious thing I've ever said in my life, but it sounded cool, so we're going to leave it in the interview.
Okay. Good. So with that, thank you very much, Brandon, and I hope you enjoyed this concert. I hope you also get to check out this band live at some point when the pandemic is over. But for now, please enjoy Brandon Coleman Quartet.
Hi, my name is Brandon Coleman, guitarist and composer, and I'm here with my quartet featuring Ben Tweet on the piano, Matt Wiles on the bass, and Jeff Malott on the drums. And we're really happy to be here at the Hayner Center to play for their jazz series, and hope you enjoy these songs. This first composition is one of mine called Midnight Bell. This next song is a composition of mine, a ballad called Dreaming Awake. This next composition we'll play is a variation on the blues called Winter Lantern. This song is a composition by our pianist Ben Tweet called Apex. This composition is one of mine called Ghost House. You can find us online at Facebook, Brandon Coleman Guitar, or BrandonColeman-music.com. You can find my music on Spotify, iTunes, Apple Music, and also on Bandcamp, BrandonColeman.bandcamp.com.